Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session. The session is titled Disrupting Translation Industry with AI, and we will be talking about different perspectives. We'll have different perspective present in our session. So I'm pleased to introduce Adam Wooden, who is Associate Professor of Translation and Localization Management at Middlebury Institute. And I'm also pleased to introduce Markus Ivarsson, who is Head of Localization Management at Volvo. I'm Olga Bregovaya, and I run AI and machine translation practice here at SmartLink. So on that note, since we have three distinct perspectives, we have technology provider, we have academia, and then we have enterprise AI users and practitioners. Let's make sure that we cover all three perspectives in the session. So Adam, first question to you. You teaching localization studies in the modern time and day, I can only imagine how challenging it should be. And my questions to you would be, where are you guys? What are you teaching your students? What is it you present in your curriculum? And honestly, my big question is, how often do you need to update your curriculum? So let's start with that.
Yeah, so we need to update our curriculum constantly, and that's really been the case for a long time. This has always been a fast evolving industry. Things have been changing quickly, so we've never really been able to sit on our curriculum and keep it evergreen. Certainly not in the translation technology courses that I've taught, but that's truer now than it ever has been. Where everything needs to be updated much more thoroughly, uh, where really the changes that we've seen in the last year and a half with generative AI are touching every part of it. You can't teach something about quality management or vendor management or computer assisted translation or anything without talking about how generative AI uh, will has already affected it and will likely affect it even more in the future. So so yeah, we're having to update more than ever. But what are we teaching students? Fortunately, a lot of what we're teaching is, even though there's so many changes, there are other things that haven't changed. As it's been said before, we're kind of fortunate to be, what some people might call one of the best prepared industries
Mhm.
for these changes with AI, just because we've been dealing with some portion, uh, some version of AI for many years. So a lot of the principles that we've taught in the past about how it can affect things and how it could affect things in the future, some of that's just coming true. And so it's kind of nice that we're at least on a similar trajectory, even if it's pointing a little more steeply upward now.
Thank you very much. That's a great perspective. But if we look at your students, what questions are top of their mind? What are they come into the class and like, okay, what is the biggest what and what is the biggest how for your students?
Yeah, well, of course, the biggest question on any student's mind is, okay, will they have a job? Will everything that they want to do possibly be replaced by the time they actually get out into the workforce? That's the biggest challenge. And then after I can tell them, no, there are definitely going to be things that you'll need to do. There's still human strengths that machines can't match, and if you use human strengths where they're most appropriate and machine and AI strengths where they're most appropriate, you're going to make wonderful things happen. So yeah, so that's one of the biggest questions, and then that leads then to the next question of, okay, well, what can I do as a human? What are the strengths that I can develop to actually be useful in these areas? And more so, it's developing these bigger picture strengths, these strengths uh, that come in combination with knowledge of language, these strengths in understanding business and strategy, understanding tech at a higher level that will allow students to do well. And yeah, which again leads to this other question that I know we talked about you asking of, okay, what kind of jobs are
Right.
students going to be taking after graduation? And of course, yeah, that's changing. We're still seeing, we're not seeing perhaps as much change in job titles yet as we probably will in the next year or so, but it's starting, right? So a lot of our students are still taking a traditional job title like localization project manager,
Right.
and many similar job titles. But we are starting to see that evolution. So I'll bring up an example of one of our graduates graduated a number of years ago, the name of Adam Youngfield, where yeah, for a while he was heading up translation operations at a nonprofit, and then he moved into a little bit more forward thinking, bigger picture role as head of globalization enablement for nonprofit church, and just but he's really been trying to stay on top of what this AI technology is doing as part of that role. And so he was basically asked to create a new role, basically over AI product management, where he's also heavily involved in what AI is doing with translation, but also with other things because it's going to tie it together with so much else. And so we really need to be preparing students to take on not just the traditional roles that exist right now, but to be thinking so big picture that they can create the new roles that don't exactly exist yet.
So it's really inventing, looking into the future and inventing something or creating something that was not even there and we didn't even think about a year and a half ago. And these roles are transforming. And I agree, large language models are called language for a reason, right? They do come from language. Thanks so much, Adam. And Marcus, off to you. So the Adam's last statement was, we want to create jobs for our students. So let's talk about places where they may be landing those jobs, right? And let's talk about it. AI disrupting the industry from large enterprise, and it's hard to imagine a larger enterprise than Volvo. So what is your story? What are your challenges? When, how do you build confidence in AI at your organization? So please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So at Volvo, we are part, or we are on a digital transformation journey. We started using Excel spreadsheets and sending those out to markets to do translations. That's like ancient history in the context of what we're talking about today. But that was the sort of starting point. When we realized that no, this cannot be the best way of doing translations, we started working with Smartling, and with the help of Smartling, we were able to centralize the way we were working with translations. We had one way of doing translations for all markets, all languages. I think that we're working with like 60 to 80 markets. And to have Excel spreadsheets sent out to those, that's like a nightmare. But now we are doing it the correct way. We have a central team working with global rollouts, with the translations, all of the aspects in the content life. But of course, we cannot just rest on our laurels, expecting everything to work the way it's always done. So of course, we're always looking at ways to improve the process. As you know, when you come into a rollout phase, one thing that you don't have too much of is time. So any hour here, any minute there, you can slice off the time. It's appreciated by all. And that's where AI comes in. We realized that AI would be a great help for us in certain parts of that rollout phase. So what we've done is to utilize all of our translation memories where we have approved translations, approved by our stakeholders, our markets. And that's like, very subjective. What's a good translation? I guess if the three of us were to proofread exactly the same sentence, we would come up with perhaps a little bit different versions of what's a good translation. But they would probably still work, all of them. But rather than not reusing all of the assets that we have, we thought, let's train translation engines on these assets. And once we did that, and started to roll that out, we saw that, yeah, the time to market is off the charts. We're saving like 60% of the translation time is slashed off. Of course, when you're not having humans doing translations and you have AI instead, we're slashing off a lot of money in that aspect as well. And finally, we are of course checking our quality, and the quality is not, there is no significant drop in the quality. So the golden triangle, not the one in Asia, but the golden triangle of cost, time, and quality. That's it's like perfect for us at the moment.
And the driver in the golden triangle, which one of the drivers do you think would be your main motivation to deploy AI? Is it cost savings? Is it consistency and quality? Or is it something that might be time to market?
Yeah, I think depends on who you ask. I'm interested in all three, of course, but we have other stakeholders in our process. We have project managers that want to be able to promise delivery dates. They're, of course, interested in the time aspect. We have the economical department, or the business side of things. They're interested in the cost slashing. And of course, the markets, they're very interested in the quality. We are also interested in that, of course, but they don't want to take up too much time because of lower quality in translations. So far, all those three different stakeholders are happy.
Wonderful. Now, you said two words that got my attention, one being translation memory and the other one being stakeholders. And there is something that we are observing among our customers with the advancements in generative AI. We see quite a few of our customers talking to us about generating either source or target side, and it often comes from internal stakeholders, and these requests come from internal stakeholders. What does it even do to translation memory?
Yeah, so we're not on the sort of forefront here. We're keeping it safe, so to speak. Volvo, we're always keeping it safe. So we're not generating any content that's written by humans. We're not publishing any content that is not touched or viewed by humans or approved by humans. We view our translation process as different boxes, and we've just removed the human translator box and replaced it with an AI translation box. And this comes down to trust. We want to make sure that all the stakeholders, again, trust the process. So yeah, we still see that we do need humans to sign off the content, that we will put their stamp of approval, so to speak.
Thank you very much. And trust, I think, is probably one of the most important words in the AI deployment universe right now. And that's actually one of our presentations, recent presentations was called, SmartLink presentation was called From Frenzy to Trust. And that's probably where we are at the moment. So thanks a lot for that. And I think now it would be a crystal ball time. So where do we see things going? And maybe I could kick it off with a little slide that I put together not so long ago. And we can take it from there. And I'd love to get your guys' opinion on where do you think things are going? If we're looking at the slide, what we were thinking, and it's very subjective and very rough take on where we think things are going, is 2024 is exactly, Marcus, to your point, where we go from frenzy to trust. And what I was thinking, what shall we call it? And I went with measured adoption, right? When we've already learned our lessons, and now we can carefully measure, to your point again, and Adam, equally to your point, what do we teach people? What do we bring? What kind of knowledge does new generation bring to the job market? What do we learn? Mitigating known issues, absolutely. NMT, again, Marcus, to your point, NMT is still very prominent tech, and we still see that NMT often outperforms large language models on translation tasks, especially when it comes to predictability. And then we solve for known use cases, right? And then we jump into what do we think is going to happen next? We are deploying with confidence. we've measured our adoption, and then we start exploring new use cases and start reskilling our workforce based on what we've learned in the previous years, right? And something that I label goodbye shiny objects, there could be some things that we've implemented, some things that we would see out there, not just in our industry, but across the world, where, wow, it looks good, let's deploy AI. And it might not necessarily have been the fit case for AI. And then obviously the very concept of, the industry operates on cost per word. And there's a lot of conversation about, is it even here to stay? Or will there be other pricing models? So then 27, we think like platform-led is where whatever the platform is. First of all, convergence of MT and LLM is definitely very, very close. If we look at Google Adaptive, for instance, the latest generation is definitely an LLM trained specifically for, or developed specifically for translation tasks, probably near human parity. And again, that's something, Marcus, that you mentioned, that translations are getting better and better, and you don't see significant degradation in quality. Validation versus editing, and again, does cost per word even survive it? And then God knows where the world finds ourselves in 2029. So we're thinking, okay, let's call it singularity operator, and possibly there'll be tasks with no human touch, such as translation generation, and probably cost per word might be replaced by platform costs, and human will be compensated in some other way, whatever that way is, per task or by an hour. And probably by then, maybe even sooner, different content scenarios will be covered, such as we'll already be very, very comfortable in multilingual videos, multilingual digital humans, and other possible scenarios. And definitely a lot of self-healing, self-training. As we know, a lot of data sets are still being built to train those models. So this is a very rough view, but I would love to get your inputs on where do you think the world is going, and what do you think the future holds for us? Adam, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I really like how Marcus gave an illustration of moving away from the tedious tasks and tedious methods of management, like in spreadsheets, and moving towards being able to think bigger picture, right? And who doesn't want that? What project managers, what translators, anyone in the industry, who wouldn't want to just get rid of all those tedious things and move into what's bigger picture? I mean, at first, it sounds scary as you think, okay, well, does that technically mean that machines are taking over some things that we do? Yes, but in wonderful ways, all the ways that we want, getting rid of all these things that we have wanted to get rid of for years so that we can think bigger picture. And so with that, yeah, that's going to create a lot of opportunities for translators even to think bigger picture and act as linguists that affect a communication strategy more holistically. It'll give opportunities for those in localization management to expand, moving into bigger picture roles, like we've seen some of our leading executives do in the industry. If you think about those like Natalie Kelly and Anna Schlegel, who've really taken on big roles and become huge influencers in their organizations and in our industry, they've taken on much more than just translation. And they've taken on responsibility for really creating a lot of things. And there'll be great opportunities for that. Now, when that really happens, when we have colleagues in our industry able to move into these bigger roles, we'll actually be able to see some of the changes that we've been talking about for decades, where we'll stop just talking about changing the pricing model away from per word, but actually start seeing it. So this is exciting. There's so many little things that we've been talking about for years, quality estimation and other things that we've only been talking about and haven't really seen it in practice across the industry. Now we're going to see those opportunities, have so much of this actually rolled out in a relatively short period of time in the coming year, 2 or 3. If we maintain the right perspective and look for these opportunities and look to use the technology in the best way possible.
Wonderful. Very promising. Thanks so much. And yeah, it's Natalie, both Natalie and Anna are great authors as well, right? And they've captured a lot of their knowledge in their books, which I absolutely love. Maybe I'll add another woman with a similar trajectory would be Minette Norman, who also happens to be the keynote speaker for this conference, and her insights about what innovation actually does for the human in the loop, right? And the comfort and emotional safety and psychological safety at a workspace, and how to be a prominent leader. So thanks for using those examples. Beautiful. Marcus, off to you. What does your crystal ball look like?
We're still utilizing the old workflows. We have a content creation, we have a translation, we have a sign-off. I see that the connection between a source and a target, that will be looser and looser. It will probably be like more of a brief where, okay, can you generate something regarding this topic or this content for this specific audience in this market, where it will not be like translation anymore. It'll be local content creation, more or less. So puts a lot of pressure on, or responsibility of the, should we say, engine operators. It's important to ask the right thing, because if you ask the wrong thing, you will get something completely different, of course. So I think tying back to something that Adam said as well, which I thought was really interesting, the would and should, where the would or the possibility of doing so many things maybe is not equal to that you should do all of those things. So I think that there is still room for the sort of responsible person in the room, or the responsible grown-up, where eventually I might see it that we're working with signing off content at the moment. There is someone given a stamp of approval, but that approval might shift into, we're approving this engine or this way of generating content, where we're not looking at each individual result, but this is our engine. We stand by it, so to speak. And now we're probably not talking, at least for Volvo, we're not talking 25. We're talking more long term. But I think it's so difficult to predict. Just look 4 years earlier. We would probably, well, maybe I guessed a few of your bullets, but definitely not all of them. At least I would have.
Okay. Yeah, and again, the timeline is very arbitrary, and that's why I'm saying probably most of the things will shape up much further out into the future, right? But right now, I think to your point of trust, we're probably landing at a place where we're building up the trust into how we can implement AI in our universe. And to your point it will only do what it tell it to do. I was thinking about the analogy with a taxi driver, right? If you don't tell the taxi driver where to take you, he or she will just be cruising around without receiving your guidance. So Adam and Marcus, thanks a lot for joining us, and enjoy the rest of our Global Ratings Conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.